Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. You would head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. And, of course, you can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And Colts players are reporting today for training camp, and Colts social media page is posting all these photos of guys walking in, and Zaire Franklin's got a big boom box for some reason, and Caitlin Clark shoes, and I don't know. That's not for me. That's for someone else. I'm ready to see these guys play football. I'm ready to figure out if these guys worked on their games in the offseason. Did they come back bigger, stronger, faster, healthier, whatever it is? And the guy, or one of the two guys, that everyone's going to be focused in on throughout this training camp is, of course, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. I mean, come on. Who else are we going to pay attention to? Jonathan Taylor? I mean, yeah, of course we're going to pay attention to him, but we know he's going to be the starting running back. We know Bernard Ryman's going to be the starting left tackle. We know Quentin Nelson is never going to have his job taken as long as Chris Ballard's the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. But quarterback, the most important position on the field, the one that usually decides whether or not your team's going to be any good or not, no one really knows who that starting quarterback is going to be. And I think everyone kind of understands what a good Anthony Richardson season would be because we've seen him here the last 2 years. Can he complete 60% of his passes? Can he hit, consistently that little 7-yard out route to, Michael Pittman Jr. or Josh Downs, right? Can he be a little less aggressive? Can he hit Jonathan Taylor in the flat just a little bit more often as opposed to just chucking it deep to Alec Pierce? These are the things that we want to see from Anthony Richardson. We want to see that, mainly, that completion percentage go up. I think that if that happened and he completed somewhere between like 60 and 62% of his passes, everyone would feel pretty good about the direction that Anthony Richardson is heading in. Obviously, if, he continues to be a threat on the ground as well. But what about Daniel Jones? Right? This is the quarterback that we are not as familiar with, but between the two, because the Giants have been bad and the Colts have also been bad. And so they've both been playing at 1 o'clock Eastern every single Sunday. And because of that, you haven't had opportunities to watch the Giants and watch Daniel Jones be bad week in and week out. Or I guess not week in and week out. I guess you haven't had the opportunity to see him be bad every single week that he wasn't benched for Tommy DeVito this last week. So I want to pose a question. What is a good Daniel Jones season? If he ends up being the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, what will we define as success from Daniel Jones? And for me, if he can have the same year or a similar year to what Gardner Minshew had his 1 year in Indianapolis, then I would consider that a good season for Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones would actually consider that Gardner Minshew season the best year of his career. Daniel Jones and Gardner Minshew, they're basically the same person throwing the football. Obviously, Daniel Jones brings a lot more in terms of his ability to run the read option, and he's got good straight line speed. He's not going to bust anybody's ankles except for his own if he, tries to juke or something. But, he brings more in the run game than Gardner Minshew. But when you look at how they throw the football and the numbers, they are frighteningly similar, considering that Gardner Minshew has been a backup quarterback for the majority of his career, backing up the likes of guys like Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder last year in Las Vegas. Daniel Jones has played 11 more games in his career, 70, to Gardner Minshew's 59. So the total numbers aren't really a fair thing for us to compare. So I would like for us to look at their per game averages throughout their careers. Because like I said, they're essentially the same guy. Daniel Jones has completed 64% of his passes throughout his career. Gardner Minshew has completed 63%. of his passes. Daniel Jones averages 208 passing yards per game. Gardner Minshew's at 202 passing yards per game. Daniel Jones has a touchdown to interception ratio of less than 1.5. That's not good. Gardner Minshew is 2-1 exactly, 68 touchdowns to 34 interceptions. Daniel Jones has thrown 70 touchdown passes in 70 games. Gardner Minshew has thrown 68 touchdown passes in 59 games. Gardner Minshew, his passer rating slightly higher at 88.5 to Daniel Jones's 84.3. A lot of those numbers, except for the touchdown to interception ratio, are nearly identical. They are essentially the same guy. Daniel Jones throws some more interceptions, throws a few less touchdown passes on a per-game average than Gardner Minshew. But, the ability to run the football, he does have 11 more rushing touchdowns in his career than Gardner Minshew. So that kind of makes up for it a little bit. But if he can find a way to throw the football as well as Gardner Minshew did in Indianapolis, then it would be the best year of Daniel Jones's career. And you're not really asking for much. That one Gardner Minshew season where he only started 13 games, appeared in all 17. He threw for 3,300 yards. Okay, that would be a career high for Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, never thrown for 3,300 yards in a season. Jeez, that's pitiful. Gardner Minshew threw 15 touchdown passes. That would be the second highest mark, or that would tie the second highest mark of Daniel Jones's career in terms of passing touchdowns in a season. Okay, so if he can get to around 3,300 yards and throw 15 touchdown passes, right, and can continue to kind of be the threat on the ground that he's been throughout his career, and he can complete somewhere between 64 and 67% of his passes, then I think people are going to be really happy with what Daniel Jones brings to the table. That'll be below average but consistent quarterback play, something that the Colts haven't really had in the last 2 seasons. And if he does that, then maybe, just maybe, the Colts will have a chance to win this division. I don't think they will. I think Houston is going to be the best team in this division. I just think that defense is going to be nasty. Again, it was last year. People forget they won a playoff game last year because of that defense and how nasty they are on that side of the football. A lot of really good players at all 3 levels. Okay. And so in order for the Colts to maybe compete with Houston, all that they need from Daniel Jones, who I believe is going to be the week 1 starter, all they need from Daniel Jones to be competitive in a bad division is a career year from Daniel Jones. Oh, man, which is equivalent to that one Gardner Minshew season where the Colts went 9-8. It's been 6 years of bad quarterback play from Daniel Jones. And I was thinking about this, and, loyal listener, C. Fitch, who I appreciate, he went to bat for Daniel Jones yesterday because I'm pretty tough on Daniel Jones. I don't think he's very good. He's not going to be a long-term answer here in Indianapolis. That's why I don't think that, even though Daniel Jones will likely win the job, I don't think that they move off of Anthony Richardson, because Daniel Jones is not the long-term answer. We like to throw around the words, in phrases like, oh, this guy flashed, or, man, this guy really popped. Daniel Jones has never flashed or popped. It's never happened. It's just been, oh, that guy's not very good. And then you change the channel because the Giants have been bad with Daniel Jones there. And so if you think Daniel Jones is going to be good this year, then you're betting on Shane Steichen. That's really what you're doing. You're sitting back, you're saying, all right, Shane Steichen, he found a way to win 8 games last year, undefeated in the year 2025. And he did that with 2 bad quarterbacks. He found a way, to win 8 games despite bad quarterback play, right? Found a way to be, a swing pass away from winning the division his first year as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. If Gardner Minshew just makes that pass, or Tyler Goodson just makes that catch, then the Colts win the division. He did that with Gardner Minshew. Once again, a career backup who, once he left Indianapolis, ended up being the backup quarterback to Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder. Brutal. Brutal. So if you like Daniel Jones this year, and if you think that he's gonna lead the Colts to a division title or more than 7.5 wins, you're not betting on Daniel Jones because we've got 6 years of him being really bad. You're betting on Shane Steichen and the system and the play calling, which I don't think is really a bad bet at all. Because the 1 year that Shane Steichen had a quarterback who was semi-consistent, Gardner Minshew, that one season, 3,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, completed 63% of his passes. The 1 year he had a below average quarterback, because that is below average quarterback play. 3,300 yards is not good. 15 touchdowns is not very good. 15 touchdowns to 9 interceptions is bad. Okay? So the 1 year that Shane Steichen had not Anthony Richardson and old Joe Flacco, as his starting quarterback, he got to 9 wins and had a chance to win the division. So if you want to bet on Daniel Jones, which is really a bet on Shane Steichen, I don't blame you, but I just find it really hard to bet on Daniel Jones. And some of you may say, hey, fair enough, but kind of tough to bet on Anthony Richardson as well, which is a fair point. I don't really want to bet on either guy, which is why if I had to bet on the Colts over under of 7.5 wins, I would undoubtedly take the under. Simple as that. Now, Daniel Jones isn't the only guy that we have our eye on here in Indianapolis as we head into, year 2 for guys like Adonai Mitchell and Matt Gonsalves. By the way, that draft class from last year, really important. Matt Gonsalves is going to start this year, 3rd-round pick out of Pitt, probably going to play right guard. Tanner Bortolini, 4th-round pick, center out of Wisconsin. He's probably going to be the starting center. Adonai Mitchell, I hope, sees some more snaps this year. And then obviously 1st-round pick, Laiatu Latu. He's got to be a guy this year. He's the first defensive player off the board. And I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to Laiatu Latu and him figuring things out and becoming a better player and being more impactful, he's got to be a 3-down guy this year. He has to be a 3-down player. He only played 54% of the defensive snaps last year. And that's just not enough for the first defensive player drafted. You look at some of the other guys around the league that are pretty dominant, the TJ Watts of the world. Yeah, that guy played like 77% of the snaps last year for the Steelers. He has consistently been somewhere between like 70 and 85% of the defensive snaps played for the Steelers. Trey Hendrickson plays a lot of snaps for that Bengals defense. Josh Hines Allen in Jacksonville plays a lot of snaps for that Jacksonville defense. And 54% of the snaps played for Laiatu Latu last year just isn't enough. He has to play 75 to 80% of the snaps on defense this year, which means he's got to be more than just a guy who rushes the passer. He has to be a legitimate 3-down edge. He's got to be a guy who can set the edge whenever the Colts are defending the run. And then obviously on 3rd and 8, it's time to be great and go get the quarterback. That is something that has to happen this year. And he can rush the passer. Okay, like we've been through the pressure rate. Like he led the Colts in like quarterback pressures and quarterback knockdowns. And he was like 2nd in quarterback hits. He does a good job of getting around the quarterback on the downs that he plays. The issue is he's not on the field enough. 54% of the snaps isn't enough. Like, of course, he only had 4 sacks last year. He wasn't on the field. This year, he needs to play significantly more snaps. And I think that if that happens, he's got a decent chance at being a double-digit sack guy, which needs to happen. First edge rusher off the board. Chris Ballard told us after drafting him that they couldn't believe that he was there, and they got the best edge rusher in the draft and all this kind of stuff. That's great. It's year 2. Let's go. You've had a year to adjust, to these NFL level offensive tackles. Very different than playing in, the Pac-12. All right, this is just a little different. right? But he needs to play 75 to 80% of the snaps on defense this year. If that happens, then he should be a double-digit sack guy at a minimum. At a minimum. If he doesn't play that many snaps, then he needs to be like an 8-sack guy. Can we get Kwity Paye level production from him rushing the passer in year 2? I sure hope so. So he's got to figure that part of it out. But for him, it starts with the run defense, because you can't be a 3-down guy if you can't set the edge. Okay, and I understand, like, when we talk about edge rushers, we talk about their ability to rush the passer and all those important things. But, like, they have to be able to set the edge and stop the run as well. It is important, because you only get to pin your ears back on 3rd down when you get stops on 1st and 2nd down. And so usually that consists of them running the football at least once. So the run defense from Laiatu Latu has to be better so that he can play 75 to 80% of the snaps this year, which I think is going to happen because there's just not enough defensive line depth for the Indianapolis Colts to only play him 54% of the snaps this season. There's just not enough depth. Like when you look at that depth chart, it's not great. Like, there's not a ton of luxuries on there. JT Tuimoloau, second round pick this year. He's going to be a rookie. Yeah, he's going to be like the backup. Who knows if he's going to be any good? Samson Ebukam is 30 years old, coming off of an Achilles tear. I get it. The last time he played, I believe 9.5 sacks, 10 sacks. He was somewhere around that number. That was 2 years ago, when he was 28, not 30, and not coming off of a torn Achilles. Who knows how good he's going to look? Tyquan Lewis is 30, coming off of elbow surgery last year and a million other injuries, high ankle sprains. He's torn the patellar tendon in both of his knees. How good is he going to be at 30 years old with a CVS receipt worth of injuries? So Laiatu Latu is going to have to play a lot more snaps this year. And I hope that he looks like the best defensive player in that draft class from last year, because the Colts are going to need him to be like that, because they don't have a simple, purely dominant pass rusher. DeForest Buckner's 31. Grover Stewart's 32. That defensive line, it's a little older. So they need Laiatu Latu to pick up some of the slack. And they need for JT Tuimoloau to at least be solid, to at least be an option to give them a little bit more depth along that defensive front. We've got more Colts topics all day long. Tyler Warren, I know everyone's excited about him, right? Like I said, training camp, all that stuff. Players are reporting today. What's Tyler Warren going to look like this season? What's a fair expectation for him? Carlie Irsay, the Colts, they released this article yesterday where they interviewed her, and she gave a lot of interesting quotes. I am excited for her, for what her time as the owner of the Colts is going to look like. I think it's going to go in a positive direction just after reading some of these quotes, not only from her, but also what some of the other people in the building have said about her. So we're going to get into that. Big Ten football standings. I've got ideas on who's going to win the division the conference. How good is Indiana going to be compared to the rest of the conference? So it's just football all day today, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But do you know what else is a lot of fun? Zaxby's. I love Zaxby's. The chicken's so good. That 3 nibblers meal is nothing short of fantastic. And we've got a sweet deal going on with Zaxby's for you right now. Okay, Zaxby's delivers a flavor experience that it's louder than words. Like I can't put into words how good Zaxby's is. And that's why we've got this sweet deal going on for you right now. This Friday, on sale right now. Get $50 in gift certificates for only $25 at indiesportsticket.com. That's indiesportsticket.com, and click on the Sweet Deals tab. Offer available only for the Wesleyan Road, Indianapolis, Avon, and Canby locations. Get out there. Go to indiesportsticket.com and take advantage of this deal. Today's show also sponsored by Holiday World and Splash and Safari. 11:15, 11:20 in that window. Probably going to give away, or we are going to give away, Holiday World and Splash and Safari tickets. So make sure at 11:15, 11:20, you're tuned in, listening, ready for me to call for callers because we're giving away more tickets to Holiday World and Splash and Safari. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, what's a good Tyler Warren season? What's a fair expectation for the guy that everyone here in Indianapolis pounded the table for before the Colts drafted him? I'll tell you what fair expectations are for him when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show. On Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith to follow me and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. You can listen to the Dan Dockett Show on that app as well. Uwe Blop at 1 o'clock today for Dan, and Armando Salguero to get you ready for the upcoming NFL season. Laura Overton, who's she works for the Colts. She reported earlier today, 15 minutes ago. Oh, an hour and 25 minutes ago. My bad. Apparently, wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. said that members of the offense, including both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, spent about half a week out in California working on routes, working on the offense. That's good. Good to know Anthony Richardson's throwing. Good to know that these guys are putting in some extra time. There's a photo. They all went fishing. Team morale. Love that. Not really. Couldn't really care less about it. But Tyler Warren was out there. And I think that is the guy that people are most excited to see put on a Colts uniform this season. You know, everyone just excited about him because he was at Penn State and he's jumping over USC defenders, making just incredible grabs. He's throwing the football a little bit. They just had him do everything. And if you watched Penn State play football last year, then you just get overwhelmed with Tyler Warren stuff because they wanted to get that dude the football as much as they could. And I'm kind of hoping that the Colts employ a similar strategy because I like Michael Pittman Jr., but is he a real game changer at wide receiver? I would argue no. Josh Downs, I like Josh Downs. Does a lot of good things. Has a unique skill set compared to the other receivers in that Colts room. Well, is Josh Downs going to change a game for you? No, not really. Adonai Mitchell, no, probably not. Alec Pierce, no. Not going to change a game for you. Maybe Tyler Warren is that guy. Travis Kelce can change a game for the Chiefs. George Kittle can change a game for the 49ers. Brock Bowers, if he ever gets a good quarterback, which he does this year, Geno Smith, he's going to have the ability to change the game for the Raiders. And we saw Brock Bowers last year, and I think this is part of why Colts fans are so excited about Tyler Warren, because they saw Brock Bowers last year. Brock Bowers put together the best season any rookie tight end has ever had. 112 receptions, 1,194 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns with a rotating quarterback of Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and Desmond Ridder. And he put up those numbers. That's kind of crazy. That is crazy. There's no kind of about it. That's insane. And I don't think Tyler Warren's going to be quite that good, which is okay. I don't think Tyler Warren's going to be that dominant in his rookie season, but I do expect him to be impactful no matter who plays quarterback for the Colts, because he's a legitimate two-way tight end. He's going to be able to put his hand in the dirt, get hands on people and block in the run game. And we all know what he can do as a pass catcher, right? That's why everyone is excited about him. And so I think setting the bar at somewhere around, 80 receptions for 750 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, I think that is a very fair bar to put him at. And I think that if he hit those numbers, I would be very happy with that production from Tyler Warren in his rookie season. And I'm sure you hear those numbers, that. Those numbers don't sound too crazy, but for a tight end, they are. If Tyler Warren had 80 receptions for 750 yards and 5 touchdowns last year in the NFL, that would have been a top 5 tight end season. It would be a top 5 tight end season. 80 receptions would have been 5th amongst tight ends last year. 750 receiving yards would have been 5th among tight ends last year. And 5 touchdown receptions would have been tied for 9th amongst tight ends. 80 catches, 750 yards, 5 touchdowns. That bar might honestly be a little bit too high. But if he stays healthy, and if Shane Steichen features him as much as I think he's going to, then those numbers, I think, are very doable. The tight end was a very important part of his offense when he was in Philadelphia, when he was in Los Angeles, Phillip Rivers. Justin Herbert, excuse me, being the starter. There was a lot of Hunter Henry action. The best year of Hunter Henry's career. He's been in the league for probably close to 10 years now. Best year came the one year he was with Shane Steichen, having Justin Herbert throw him the football. So I think that Shane Steichen is going to do a really good job of getting him open. The question is whether or not the Colts are going to have a quarterback who can get him the football. Okay, and hopefully they can, because Tyler Warren's a guy who hopefully is going to be in a Colts uniform for the next decade. Hanging out in the end zone. Hopefully he's the best tight end the Colts have had since Dallas Clark. That's the hope. Will that happen? I don't know. We'll see. But if things go the way that Carlie Irsay wants them to be, then they absolutely will. She had a quote yesterday where she said, quote, "I don't like talking just about winning. I like talking about being the best," end quote. That's a good standard to have. Goals to be the best. There's an old quote, shoot for perfection, settle for excellence. Try to be the best. And I'm a fan of that. And look, the Colts haven't had standards in a long time. It seems like Carlie Irsay is going to put some in place. Because let's just be honest. What has the standard been for the last 5 years? Let's maybe make the playoffs. If we can make the playoffs this year, that'd be good. Oh wait, we didn't. We went 8-9 or 9-8 again. That's what it's been for the Colts for the last 5 years. And hopefully, Carlie Irsay taking over, we see some of those things start to change. If you read the full article that the Colts put out, with all the different Carlie Irsay quotes, she's interesting. She told a lot of stories in this article. And by stories, I don't mean personal stories. She referenced this story of how in 1911, 2 explorers set out in this attempt to be the first human to reach the South Pole. Roald Amundsen, a Norwegian, and Robert Falcon Scott, a guy from Great Britain. Okay, each had a team, and she basically kind of tells this whole story. I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but she basically used the story to talk about how important discipline is, and how when you have a plan, you have to stick to it, and you can't vary from it. And it seems like she's going to have some patience, which is a good thing. Right? You want owners that have patience and standards. The Titans owner has no patience, and they fired a lot of people. They've had 3 different general managers in the last 4 years. Doesn't seem like Carlie Irsay is going to run through employees like that. Okay, but it doesn't seem like she's going to have too much patience, though. Okay, because she was asked about drafting and developing players after kind of giving that kind of patience and discipline spiel. And she talked about the importance of using both, free agency and drafting good players. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, Chris Ballard will be fired at the end of this year. Maybe not, though. There was a slight change this last season, going out and getting Cam Bynum and Travarius Ward. So, maybe Carlie Irsay is the one who kind of pushes who pushes Chris Ballard to actually use free agency, which I'm really excited about seeing how Cam Bynum and Travarius Ward impact the Colts in their winning this year. Okay, and it also seems like Carlie Irsay has a good understanding about football. Shane Steichen had a quote, where he said, when you talk football with her, she gets it, she understands it. So that is a very important thing. Okay, now obviously, Shane Steichen's not gonna stand up there and be like, Carlie Irsay does not know what she's talking about. Obviously that wasn't gonna happen, but it's good to know she has some level of football knowledge. She should, because she stood on the field for the last, however many years. So her dad was a really good owner for a long time. Jim Irsay did, a lot of good things for the Colts, won a Super Bowl as the owner. It wasn't great at the end as his health declined, but if you go back and you read the whole article, it seems like he's done a good job of getting her ready for this. Hopefully she's ready for it. Very intrigued to see how her first season goes. I don't think we're really going to know what kind of an owner she is, though, until we hit the offseason. Um, just because that's really kind of when changes are made. That's when you fire people. And I guess if she wanted to, she could step in at some point and say, hey, we're not playing Daniel Jones / Anthony Richardson anymore. We're going to play the other guy. Even though, she talks about discipline. So hopefully that's not the kind of owner that she ends up being. But it'll be very kind of intriguing to kind of see how she deals with all of that and, being in the big chair for this first season. So a lot of things to follow with the Colts this year. Obviously, the rookies, Laiatu Latu's development, the quarterback situation, that's going to be at the forefront. But Carlie Irsay, what kind of owner is she going to be? Because ownership in sports, it's the most important thing. Okay, the Bengals have one of the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL with Joe Burrow, but their ownership sucks, and they go 9-8 and they don't make the playoffs. So, what kind of owner is Carlie Irsay going to be? Hopefully, she's one that doesn't meddle. Hopefully, she's one that has patience, but not too much. That's kind of what I hope for. That's the bare minimum for me, and hopefully, she can reach that standard. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Big Ten football starts up soon. College football, it's right around the corner, folks. Indiana, how good are they going to be this year? I've got a prediction where they finish in the Big Ten, and then the rest of the conference as well. Everyone picking Penn State and Ohio State. I'm telling you right now, neither one of those teams are going to win the Big Ten. I'm going to tell you who's going to win the Big Ten and why, obviously, when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Thank you for making Total Wine & More America's #1 online source for spirits, beer, and wine. Better than all those delivery apps. Total Wine's prices are up to 30% lower with super fast delivery and no hidden fees. Order direct at TotalWine.com and pay less today.
Drink responsibly, B21.
When you first saw her, she was out walking her dog. You didn't notice her at first. But when you finally did, it was too late. Because at that moment, you were speeding. She was out walking her dog and only had a second to let go of the leash. Your foot was on the gas, and her life was on the line. Speeding catches up with you. Paid for by NHTSA.
Thank you for making Total Wine & More America's #1 online source for spirits, beer, and wine. Better than all those delivery apps. Total Wine's prices are up to 30% lower with super fast delivery and no hidden fees. Order direct at TotalWine.com and pay less today.
Drink responsibly, B21.
Dan Dockage at noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith. If you want to follow me there, you can also watch the show there. And you can, of course, also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. And, all right, coming up here in about 40 minutes, we're going to give away more tickets to Holiday World and Splash and Safari. Shout out to them for sponsoring the show today. If you want to make one more memory with your kids this summer before you send them back to school, I know school starts back up soon, then win these tickets and take them to Holiday World. We're giving them away all week, so if you don't win today, you can win tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday. College football. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm glad Indiana's good at college football now because now I get to talk about it because you were actually somewhat invested after that 11-1 season where the Hoosiers made the playoff and then they got curb stomped by Notre Dame, but that's okay. They made the playoff in the first year of Coach Signanti. Everyone's, over the moon, excited about it. And I have some bad news for you. Indiana, not going to be as good this year as they were last year. Right? And it's like, but we got new quarterback. We're going to be fine. Yeah, there were other issues last year than just the quarterback position. I get it. Mendoza, like Heisman hopeful. Everyone's all excited. But I'm telling you right now, Indiana will not be as good this year as they were last year. You're looking at an 8-4 or 9-3 season. Simple as that. Now, a lot of people are picking Penn State to win the Big Ten this year. And I get it, right? They're returning 14 starters from their team last year. They have the most experienced quarterback in the Big Ten with Drew Aller, right? They lost Tyler Warren, though. It's a big deal. Tyler Warren, now an Indianapolis Colt. He was their offense last year. They weren't very dynamic at wide receiver. They lost their most prolific weapon on offense. And I get it. Drew Aller's back. Congratulations. Drew Aller's fine. Okay, he's okay. That's real. I thought he should have came out because he would have been a first-round pick this last year. Now, this next year, probably not going to be a first-round pick. So I'm going to be interested to see how they adjust without Tyler Warren. And I think some of the Drew Aller hype it's a bit much for me. But the reason why they're not going to win the Big Ten is because of that schedule. That's really what the Big Ten is about now. It's not about how good you are. It's about, do you get a scheduling break? Do you have an above-average team or a good team? And do you get a scheduling break? That's what happened to Indiana last year. They had a good football team. Not a great one, but they got a scheduling break. Michigan wasn't very good, or Michigan was average. They didn't have a quarterback, and they had to play Ohio State on the road. Those were their two tough games. Every other game, their best win was over 6-6 Nebraska. I don't think much else really needs to be said about the schedule of Indiana last year. So the question is, who's going to get that schedule? And whoever gets that easy schedule is probably going to win the Big Ten. And the team that got it this year is Michigan. Michigan is going to win the Big Ten this year because they have talent. Bryce Underwood, I get it. True freshman quarterback, all that stuff. But guess what? Their schedule is a breeze. They don't play anyone where you're like, ooh, that game's going to be tough. They open with New Mexico, blowout. They play at Oklahoma, probably going to win that one. Central Michigan at home, blowout. They're at Nebraska, probably going to win that one. Wisconsin at home, probably going to win that one. At USC, probably going to win that one. Washington at home, probably going to win that one. At Michigan State, probably going to blow them out. Purdue at home, probably going to blow them out. At Northwestern, blowout. At Maryland, blowout. Oh, and then they play Ohio State at home. That schedule is a cakewalk. And Michigan was a good football team last year that just didn't have good enough quarterback play to win games. Right? That's why they struggled. They couldn't throw a forward pass, which if you can't throw a forward pass in 2025, you're not beating very many teams. That's going to be different. This Bryce Underwood kid, top rated quarterback in the country, all that kind of stuff. Like, they're going to be significantly better because they fixed that quarterback issue. They're talented. I get it. He's young. He never played a game of college football. But the schedule's a cakewalk. They're going to be able to run the football. They've got one tough game, Ohio State, and for some reason, they have their number. If they can beat them last year, then they can undoubtedly beat them this year in a year where Ohio State has lost a lot of really good players. So I've got Michigan winning the Big Ten, Penn State finishing second, Ohio State finishing third. Okay? They've only got 2 tough games, right? They've got Penn State at home. That's important, obviously, because if they win that game, then they probably finish second. And they've got Michigan on the road. Every other game, not really tough. Okay? Like, it's pretty much a breeze outside of those 2 games, especially for a team like Ohio State. I do appreciate them playing Texas week 1, August 30th. That game's going to be a blast. And then the rest of it's a breeze. Grambling, Ohio, at Washington, Minnesota, at Illinois. That game could be interesting. I like Illinois this year, but come on, they're not going to be better than Ohio State. At Wisconsin, blowout. Penn State, that game will be tough. At Purdue, blowout. UCLA at home, blowout. Rutgers, blowout. At Michigan, probably a heartbreaking loss for Ohio State because that just kind of seems to be how it goes. But the reason why I have them finishing third and not second is just because there's a lot of uncertainty. Like, you and I both know that Ohio State is going to be talented because they're Ohio State and they've got the best wide receiver in the country and all of those things, right? So, that's great. But they're also replacing 8 starters on defense, including their 2 leading sack guys, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, who's now an Indianapolis Colt. They have a new quarterback, Julian Sang, right? He's going to be talented, but he's inexperienced. He threw 12 passes last year. That's it. So we don't know much about him either, and there's just a lot of uncertainty. Like, you and I both know, like, they're going to be talented. New offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly's not there anymore. So there's just a lot of turnover, and I'll be interested to see kind of how they navigate that. Oregon, their schedule only has two tough games on it. They're at Penn State, and they get Indiana at home, right? Every other game, they should be more talented than their opponent. They actually kind of remind me quite a bit of Ohio State. Like, they're replacing a lot of production, right? They're replacing an experienced quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, 3rd-round pick by the Browns, with a sophomore quarterback that's talented but lacks experience. So they and Ohio State, they're in the same boat. Oregon may finish in front of them just because their schedule is a little bit easier. Like, they don't play Michigan. It's just at Penn State, and they get Indiana at home, a game that they should win. 5th, this is where I have Illinois. Only 2 tough games. They're at Indiana, and they get Ohio State at home. Every other game, they should be better than whoever they're playing against. Brett Bielema doing it again, building a good team in the Big Ten. Did it at Wisconsin. Now he's doing it at Illinois. Okay, so they're going to play Western Illinois, blowout. At Duke, probably a blowout. Western Michigan, blowout. At Indiana, that's a tough game for Illinois. Right, USC at home. At Purdue, blowout. Ohio State at home, probably a loss. At Washington, that's probably a win. Rutgers at home, blowout. Maryland at home, blowout. At Wisconsin, potentially a blowout. Northwestern at home, blowout. Like, it's just a lot of winnable games on that schedule. And then you get to Indiana, who I have finishing 6th. Indiana's schedule, it's just tougher than last year's. Like, Illinois at home, like, that is not an easy football game. At Penn State, that's a really tough game on the road. At Oregon, traveling all the way up there and out there. Like, that's not an easy game. At Iowa, not a walk in the park. This schedule is significantly tougher. And to Coach Cignetti's credit, who I do think is a good coach, like, I don't think last year was just like a one-hit wonder thing. I do think that Coach Cignetti is going to build a consistently good football team down there in Bloomington. But I just, this year's much tougher than last year's. Okay. To Cignetti's credit, he's bringing in transfer quarterback Fernando Mendoza from Cal. He's going to replace Curtis Rourke, who was pretty good last year, drafted, all those things. But Mendoza's supposed to be a step up from what Rourke was. My thing and my issue with Indiana and why I'm just not sold is I just want to see the line of scrimmage be better than what it was last year. That's why they lost to Notre Dame the way that they did. Notre Dame just lined it up, and they ran the football whenever they wanted to. Simple as that. Like you can have a great quarterback. That's awesome. But if you can't stop the run, then good luck. Also, if you can't run the football, good luck. Indiana couldn't run the football against Notre Dame or Ohio State last year. Okay? And Ohio State, they couldn't really stop the run against them either. Okay? Mendoza, great. Talented. People are, there's like some Heisman buzz. That's cool. But the line play has to be better. And their schedule is significantly tougher this year than it was last year. Like they're not winning at Penn State. They're not winning at Oregon. Like those two games feel like absolute losses. No way around it. Okay, so that's two losses right off the rip. Wouldn't surprise me if they lost to Illinois at home. Wouldn't surprise me if they lost to at Iowa either. Like those are two really good football teams that probably deserve a little bit more buzz than what they're getting as of right now. Speaking of Iowa, I've got them finishing 7th behind the Hoosiers. Okay, they've got 3 tough games. That's really it, but they play all 3 at home. Indiana's at home, Oregon's at home, and Penn State's at home. They probably still lose all 3, but here's the thing with Iowa that I find interesting, and that they're kind of a dark horse team for me, because you know that the defense is going to be good because they're Iowa and the defense is good every year. The offense is starting to move in the right direction, right? Tim Lester was their offensive coordinator last year. It was his first year going into his second year, right? First year there, the offense averaged 27.7 points per game, up from 15.5 points a game in 2023. They lost their running back, Caleb Johnson. He was drafted by the Steelers, but there's some optimism because they got South Dakota State transfer Mark Gronowski. And I say that name, and you're like, Jonathan, I don't know who that is. And I say, yeah, because like you didn't take time to watch FCS football last year. Mark Gronowski was the best quarterback in the FCS football space last year. Right? This is a guy who like has like legitimate NFL hopes. And if he can show up, and like he doesn't have to be great. Like I don't think he's going to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten, but if he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, plus that defense, plus a clearly much better offensive coordinator than what they had 2 years ago, then they're kind of a dark horse. Like could they finish, 5th in the Big Ten? Could they surpass Indiana and Illinois? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting team that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on throughout the season. The issue is that schedule: Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State. Like those are 3 legitimately tough games. And the good news for them, though, they're all at home. Iowa, not the easiest place in the world to go and win games. So Iowa, very, very interesting. I will round out the rest of the Big Ten starting at 11 o'clock. By the way, between 11:15 and 11:20, we're giving away tickets to Holiday World and Splash and Safari. In that break, that's where we're going to get into it. So make sure you're tuned in and you've got your phone ready. 317-228-1430. That's the number. Don't call in yet. We're doing that giveaway here in about 20 minutes or so. So when we come back, 11 o'clock, I'll give you how the rest of the Big Ten is going to shape out.
Attention taxpayers, if you owe $5,000 or more and have missed another tax deadline, you're officially on the IRS's radar. The IRS has resumed aggressive collections. That means wage garnishments, bank levies, even seizures of your home, car, or retirement accounts. If you owe $5,000 or more and missed the deadline, you're stacking new debt on top of what you already owe. Call Priority Tax Relief now. Their experts fight back fast and are saving their clients millions in tax debt every month.
I owed over $50,000. And they settled it for pennies on the dollar. These guys are as legit as they come.
After speaking on my behalf with the IRS, my entire debt of $25,000 will be eliminated.
Whether you've received collection letters or you're already facing liens and garnishments, call for your free consultation. There are no upfront fees. Priority Tax Relief. Let's make your taxes our priority. Call 800-958-3071. 800-958-3071. 800-958-3071.
Priority Tax Relief.
Let's do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Today's show brought to you by Holiday World and Splash and Safari. School is starting back soon. If you want to make an awesome memory, one more memory this summer that your kids won't forget, take them to Holiday World. We're giving away tickets here in somewhere between like 15 and 20 minutes. Call in 317-228-1430 here in about 15 to 20 minutes for your chance to win some Holiday World tickets. Also, after you do that, go to indiesportsticket.com to check out this sweet deal that we got going on right now. This Friday, on sale right now, though. Get $50 and gift certificates for only $25 at IndiesSportsTicket.com. That is at Zaxby's. Okay, Zaxby's, great chicken. Trust me, you should totally take advantage of that deal. Now, Big Ten. I'm telling you right now, Michigan is going to win the Big Ten this year because the schedule is it's just too easy. Like, they've got one tough game. It's Ohio State, and the game's at home, right? They were a good football team last year. The difference this year is they actually have a quarterback. That's the difference. They didn't have one last year. Tough to win games when you can't throw a forward pass, right? They can actually do that this year after bringing in Bryce Underwood. I think Indiana finishes 6th. They go somewhere like 8-4, 9-3, kind of somewhere in that realm. Okay, so we'll kind of see what they look like this year. I get it. Everyone's very excited about Mendoza, but you need more than just a quarterback to win in college football. Like, you need like this thing called an offensive line and a defensive line. I'm just not convinced that Indiana is going to be great in the trenches, and that is the thing that separates the average or the really good football teams from the great ones. Like last year, Ohio State, great football team, won the national title. You know what they had? A dominant offensive and defensive line, right? Like, that's what they had. Like, when they played Indiana, the front four for Ohio State controlled the game. And you know what else controlled the game? Their offensive line. Notre Dame, Indiana, what happened? Notre Dame lined it up and they ran the football whenever they wanted. And Indiana couldn't run the football consistently. And that is the thing for Indiana. Like, if they want to kind of move into that next territory with the Penn States and the Michigans and the Ohio States, like the trench play has to be better. So right now I've got them finishing 6th in the Big Ten. We left it off at 7. Iowa, they're a dark horse for me, right? They've got a new quarterback, Mark Gronowski. Big time pickup, was the starting quarterback at South Dakota State, the best FCS team in the country last year. And if he can move up to Power 5 football and play at Iowa and continue to be impactful, then they could be a really good football team. So I've got them finishing 7th. Wouldn't be surprised if they finish 5th, though. Nebraska, I've got them finishing 8th, right? They've only got 2 tough games, Michigan at home, and they're at Penn State. The biggest reason for optimism, if you want to say, no, Jonathan, I think Nebraska finishes a little higher than 8th, would be because sophomore quarterback Dylan Raiola, Patrick Mahomes Jr. out here, he's back for his 2nd season, right? After, having a full season under his belt. Okay. We'll see how he looks this year. He was a highly touted guy coming out of high school. They've added some other pieces to kind of help him in the receiving core. Naiz Hunter, really good receiver from Cal, transfers to Nebraska, and Dane Key, a receiver from Kentucky, transferred in as well. They also added, some good players in the trenches, including a guy named Rocco Spindler from Notre Dame and Elijah Pritchett from Alabama. Right, 2 guys that are kind of beefing up that offensive line a little bit. So there's a reason for some optimism with Nebraska. I want to know more about the defense before I'm like, yeah, I really like Nebraska. Number 9, I've got USC. Lincoln Riley having a really tough time there. Year 1 comes out, goes. I think they went 11-2 that year. That would have been Caleb Williams' sophomore year, and then his junior year, not a great year. And I need some convincing when it comes to USC. There's just not a lot of talent on that roster, which doesn't make sense when you're literally located in Southern California. And like, the reason why Lincoln Riley won so many games at Oklahoma is because he just had NFL dudes all over the offensive side of the football at wide receiver, quarterback, and along the offensive line. And, the defense was just kind of whatever. And this year, when you look at this USC team, doesn't have really any NFL talent. They don't have a great quarterback. They don't have a guy who's going to be drafted in the first round. Okay? Like, that's the other thing. Like, when you think about Lincoln Riley and why he won football games at Oklahoma, quarterbacks. That was it. Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, Spencer Rattler for the little brief stint that he was the starter. Like, that's why he won games. And he doesn't have any of that this year at USC. So I'm just not convinced that they're going to be very great. Wisconsin, who I feel bad for. Luke Fickell has underachieved time and time again at Wisconsin. The offense just hasn't been good enough, right? Like that's why he won a lot of games at Cincinnati. The offense was really good, and it just hasn't really been at Wisconsin. And they've got a brutal schedule this year. They're at Michigan. They get Indiana and Oregon at home, and Ohio State and Illinois. Sure, 4 of those 5 games are at home, but man, those are 5 really tough opponents. Like 5 of the top 6 projected teams in the Big Ten, Wisconsin has to play 5 of them. That's tough. They have a new quarterback, Maryland transfer, Billy Edwards Jr. If he's a Maryland transfer, then like how good can he really be? They've got new transfers coming in to play running back. It's not great. The offensive line does have 3 starters back, so that's good for them, but really tough schedule. Okay, Minnesota, they've got only 2 tough games at Ohio State and Oregon. Like if they finished in front of Wisconsin, I think it would simply be because of the schedule. Okay, they're bringing in a new quarterback, only 5 defensive starters returning from last year, but like I said, the schedule is pretty favorable. It's Ohio State, at Ohio State and Oregon. So those are 2 losses, but every other game in the Big Ten feels winnable for them. Rutgers is winnable. Purdue is winnable. Nebraska could be winnable. At Iowa is going to be tough. Michigan State's winnable, though. At Oregon, not a win. At Northwestern's winnable. And then they close with Wisconsin. So all those other games seem pretty winnable to me. Washington, they should be better this year than they were last year in year 2 under Jeb Bush. Really only 3 tough games. That's it. Oregon and Ohio State at home, and then they're at Michigan. Same quarterbacks back. I'm going to kind of run through the end here, except for Purdue. I got UCLA finishing 13th. I feel like they're headed in the right direction, bringing in Nico Iamaleava, very talented quarterback. They got better as the year went on last year. That's usually the sign of good coaching. Are they going to be bad? Yes. Do I find them interesting, though? Also, yes. Michigan State, I really hope head coach Jonathan Smith figures it out at some point, but his team just isn't going to be very talented this year. That's kind of the issue with them. 15th is where I have Purdue, and I love Barry Odom calling out Indiana already. That's exactly what you should do if you're the head coach at Purdue and no one cares about your program and everyone cares about the Indiana program. Purdue's got 3 legitimately tough games, or 4. They've got to play Illinois. That game's at home. They've got to play Ohio State at home, and they've got to play Indiana, and they got to play at Michigan. So those are very likely 4 losses. They're playing at Notre Dame. That's a loss. Every other game, though, could they go 7-5? That feels like wishful thinking. Could they go 6-6? Maybe. Everything's revamped. Like a lot of guys left, and Barry Odom has brought a bunch of transfers in. And so if you want the glass half full thing for Purdue, it's Barry Odom's a good football coach. UNLV was dead. No one cared about him. He went 19-8 there, right? He put together a couple decent seasons at Missouri when he was there. Had a good run as the defensive coordinator at Arkansas. I don't think Purdue's going to be great. I also don't think they're going to go 1-11 like they did last year. There will be some sort of improvement. Okay, like they're going to beat Ball State. They're going to beat Southern Illinois. So there's 2 wins, right? There you go. There's your 2 wins right off the rip, Purdue. Congratulations. USC, I think that game is winnable. At Minnesota, that game is winnable. At Northwestern, that game is winnable. Rutgers at home, that game's winnable. At Washington, should also be winnable. So, they've got games that you look at them, it's look, if these transfers, they work out, because like I said, there's a lot of new faces for Purdue this next season, then maybe they make a bowl game. Probably not. They're probably going to go 5-7, 4-8, somewhere around there. But maybe, just maybe, they can find a way to win a bowl game or make a bowl game. Excuse me. Rutgers, I've got them finishing 16th. Tough schedule for them. Oregon and Penn State at home, and then they're at Ohio State and Illinois. I've got Northwestern finishing 17th. New quarterback Preston Stone gives them a little bit of hope. He was the starter at SMU, who obviously made the playoff. And then 18th, I've got Maryland. New quarterback. They're not going to be very good at the line of scrimmage. The new quarterback's a freshman. That usually means a lot of losses. A bad offensive line and a young, inexperienced quarterback, not usually a good combination. So there you go. That is my 1 through 18 Big Ten projections, with Michigan winning the Big Ten this year. And Indiana finishing 6th, going 8-4, 9-3, and then having, Purdue be better than they were last year. They won't lose every Big Ten game this year, but you're probably looking at a 4-8, 5-7, maybe a 6-6 season from the Boilermakers. The Colts are going to be bad. I firmly believe that. And, it sucks. Colts haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. After this year, it'll be the Colts haven't made the playoffs in 6 years. And the good news is Chris Ballard will likely be fired after this season. And part of that's just because he hasn't been able to solve the issue at quarterback. Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, we're going to talk about them every single day. It was nice to hear that Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson went out to California with the rest of the offense to work on some stuff for 3 days. So that's cool. I was thinking about this question last night. What's a good Daniel Jones season? He's probably going to be the starter. If it's Anthony Richardson, I think we can pretty quickly define what a good season from him is. If Anthony Richardson starts and he completes, 60% of his passes and he throws for 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, then I think people would be pretty happy with the progress from Anthony Richardson. But Daniel Jones, what's a good season from him? So let's be honest. You haven't watched a ton of Daniel Jones because the Colts and Giants have been bad. They've both been on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And look, if you have the option between watching the Colts or the Giants, you're probably going to watch the Colts. And if Daniel Jones, if he's the starter, if he can just have a season equivalent to what Gardner Minshew did his 1 year here in Indianapolis, then I'm going to be pretty happy with his production. Because, look, Daniel Jones and Gardner Minshew, when you look at their numbers, they are essentially the exact same dude. Their numbers are nearly identical across the board. When you look at the per game averages, you can't really compare the totals in their careers because Daniel Jones has played 11 more games, so the total numbers just aren't really fair to compare. So when you look at the per game averages, they're pretty similar. Daniel Jones has a career completion percentage of 64%. Gardner Minshew's at 63%. Daniel Jones averages 208 passing yards per game. Gardner Minshew's at 202 yards per game. Daniel Jones has a touchdown to interception ratio of less than 1.5. That's not very good. And Gardner Minshew's is 2-1. That's the baseline of where you want to be. Daniel Jones, he's thrown 70 touchdown passes in 70 games. Gardner Minshew's at 68 touchdown passes in 59 games. Gardner Minshew's passer rating slightly higher at 88.5 to Daniel Jones's 84.3. All those numbers are basically the same. Okay, Daniel Jones, he's throwing more interceptions, but his ability to run the ball kind of makes up for it a little bit, right? That's the one thing that he can do that Gardner Minshew really can't. 15 rushing touchdowns in Daniel Jones's career to Gardner Minshew's 4, right? So that matters. But when it comes to just purely their ability to throw the football, if Daniel Jones can run the ball effectively and put up similar passing numbers to Gardner Minshew in his 1 year here in Indy, then I think we're going to feel pretty good about the quarterback play. Not because it's great or anything, but just because the Colts fans haven't seen competent quarterback play in 3 years now. It's been a minute. So when you look at that 1 year that Gardner Minshew was here in Indy and he started 13 games, appeared in all 17 because Anthony Richardson can't stay healthy. When you look at that one season, Gardner Minshew threw for 3,300 yards, It's not great. By the way, that would be a career high for Daniel Jones if he threw for 3,300 yards this year. Gardner Minshew threw 15 touchdown passes. That would tie the second highest number of passing touchdowns in a season from Daniel Jones if he hit that mark. So if he can hit those two numbers and he can complete, 65% of his passes, then maybe, just maybe, the Colts will compete for the division. Maybe, just maybe, they'll win 8 or 9 games. all the Colts need from Daniel Jones to be competitive in a bad division is a career year. That's it. That's all they need from him, because that 1 year of Gardner Minshew, that would be the best year, numbers-wise, of Daniel Jones' career. And after 6 seasons of nothing but bad quarterback play from Daniel Jones, I'm just not convinced that we're going to get some career year from him. I'm not convinced. Like, I've seen too much bad quarterback play from Daniel Jones to be able to sit here and be like, you know what? I think year 7 is finally the year that he turns it around. And I get it. We've seen Sam Darnold turn it around, and Geno Smith turned it around, and all that kind of stuff. Like, and that's great. That's 2 guys. That's really it. Who have, done complete 180s on their careers. And I'm just not convinced that Daniel Jones is going to be that guy. But if you like Shane Steichen and you think he's a good coach and you think he's a good play caller, then bet on Daniel Jones, because that's really what it's going to come down to. The one good year that Daniel Jones has had, good is not even the right word. The one average year that Daniel Jones has had was his first year with Brian Dable, who did all the things, who just kind of put Daniel Jones in a box. We're going to give the ball to Saquon Barkley a bunch. We're not going to ask you to throw the ball deep. We're going to ask you to keep it pretty short and use your legs. All right, that was what was asked of him the one good year that he had in New York. Or excuse me, the one above average year that he had in New York. And you can make a case that he's got the same thing here, right? The Colts are going to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor a lot. Daniel Jones is still athletic. He can still use his legs. They got guys who can get open underneath. Maybe it works for him here, right? But it's only going to work if Shane Steichen plays to the strength of Daniel Jones, which we saw him do with Gardner Minshew. Maybe he does the same thing with Daniel Jones. I don't know, but if you're thinking about betting on Daniel Jones, then you better really, really like Shane Steichen and his ability to coach. And based off of what we've seen these first 2 years, I think there's some mixed opinions on that. Get your phones out. 317-228-1430 is the number as we give away tickets to Holiday World and Splash In Safari. Make one more memory with your kids before you send them back to school. Okay, 317-228-1430. That is the number to win tickets to Holiday World and Splash In Safari. You want these tickets, okay? That place is nothing but a blast. 317-228-1430. That is the number. We already got a caller. I will get to that here in a second. We'll be back with more on the Colts when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
When ordinary chicken just won't cut it, Zaxby's delivers a flavor experience that speaks louder than words. That's why we've got a sweet deal just for you. Get 2 $25 gift certificates for only $25 at IndySportsTicket.com. That's IndySportsTicket.com. Our first dry rub is here. Our lemon pepper lineup is sure to please. Try our new lemon pepper rub on our traditional or boneless wings, our famous hand-breaded chicken tenders, or our signature sandwiches stacked high with personality. More of a sauce person? We've got you covered with any one of our 12 signature sauces. Add our fried pickles, fried white cheddar bites, or veggie egg rolls as the perfect addition.
It may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Congrats to Russ Campbell for winning our Holiday World and Splash and Safari tickets. We're going to give away more tomorrow at some point in the 11 o'clock hour once again. So if you don't win them today, you'll have your chance tomorrow. What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. Football season is on the horizon. Got players reporting today for spring training. I keep calling it that. I don't know why. Yes, I do. The Cubs are good. So, I've been paying a little more attention to baseball this year. That's why I keep calling it spring training. But training camp, players reporting today. Chris Ballard set to talk to the media here in like 30 minutes, I believe. So the Dan Hawkins Show is from noon to 3. As clips kind of surface from that, we'll have those ready to go for you. Laiatu Latu, right? That is a guy that I think everyone is very intrigued by this season. Like, what is he going to look like? Is there a year 2 leap? Because there were some flashes last year, as people around here like to say. And, usually when we ask the question of, like, what is a good season from a player, numbers always come into play. Like how many sacks, pressure rate, like all those things, right? And for Laiatu Latu, I think the biggest thing that I want to see, I just want to see the guy play more snaps. If you spend the 15th overall pick on a guy, especially an edge rusher, it can't just be for him to be like a rotational third down only guy. If you spend the 15th overall pick on an edge. He's got to be a legitimate 3-down dude. Okay? A legitimate 3-down guy. Laiatu Latu was not that last year. He only played 54% of the snaps. It's not good enough for the first, defensive player drafted. He needs to play 75 to 80% of the snaps on defense this year. Okay, he needs to be a double-digit sack guy at a minimum if he plays that number of snaps. Because when you look at the Trey Hendricksons of the world and the TJ Watts and the Josh Hines Allens and the better edge rushers in the NFL, they're all playing over 70% of the defensive snaps. Okay, like I don't expect him to play every single one because playing edge rusher is not easy. Like it's a physical position, but he needs to play more than 54% of the snaps on defense this year in order for him to have the impact that the Colts want him to have. They want him to be the guy on that defensive line. But the only way that he's able to play more snaps, the only way that he's able to obtain more sacks is if he defends the run. Okay, like we don't talk about edge rushers and their ability to defend the run very often. If we did, then I think everyone would like Kwity Paye more than what they do. But it's important because the only time that you get to pin your ears back on third down is when you get stops on first and second down. Simple as that. So he's got to become, Laiatu Latu has got to become a guy who can play on all 3 downs. Okay? Now, I do think he's going to play significantly more snaps this year. But that's not necessarily going to be because he's improved. The Colts don't have a ton of defensive line depth this year. Like, the lack of depth is going to cause him to play more than 54% of the snaps this year. Like, JT Tuimoloau, if you look at the Colts depth chart, he's the backup to Kwity Paye. Who knows if he's going to be any good or not? I have no idea. Like, he could show up and be really dominant. As a rookie, probably not, but I guess that's in the cards. Like he could also show up and be terrible. It's also very possible. Samson Ebukam is 30 years old, coming off of an Achilles tear. Who knows how good he's going to be? I get it. The last time he played, he looked really good, 9.5 sacks. Right? Like that's a good season. But once again, 30, coming off of an Achilles tear. How's he going to look? Tyquan Lewis. He's going to be 30 years old, coming off of elbow surgery. Also, the dude's been hurt so many times, so he's not reliable to play consistently. And he's 30 years old with surgery on his elbow. He's torn the patellar tendon in both of his knees. How good is he going to be? How is he going to look? Okay, the Colts are going to have to play Laiatu Latu more snaps this year than they did last year, simply because there's not as much defensive line depth. There's not as much defensive line depth. So he's going to have to play more, which means, his numbers should be better because, in theory, if you play 100 more snaps, then you should have more sacks and more tackles and all those things. So the thing for me isn't going to be how many sacks does he have. I just want to see, does he look better? And is he a guy who is, legitimately impactful on all 3 downs, not just third down or late in the 2-minute drill when he's just able to pin his ears back and go get the quarterback. He needs to be a complete edge guy, defend the run and the pass. What's a good Tyler Warren season? That's another question that I've kind of been thinking about. And Colts fans are obviously over the moon excited about Tyler Warren. Seems like the Colts organization is pretty excited about him as well. We know that Shane Steichen is. Chris Ballard, I'm sure that, he is as well. Brock Bowers had the best rookie tight end season of all time last year. 112 receptions, 1,194 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns with multiple bad quarterbacks throwing him the football. Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder. Not a good trio of quarterbacks throwing you the football. So, he was still able to put up numbers. I don't think Tyler Warren will grace the Brock Bowers level of dominance, but I do expect him to be impactful no matter who's playing quarterback for the Colts, right? Like if Brock Bowers can be impactful with Desmond Ridder and Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew throwing him the football, then Tyler Warren can be impactful with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones throwing him the football. So my expectation for him is to catch somewhere around 80 balls for 750 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Okay, I would be more than happy with that level of production from him. And when I wrote those numbers down, I was like, yeah, those numbers don't sound too crazy. Yeah, he can totally get there. And then I started looking at what all the other tight ends did last year and like where those numbers would rank. So if Tyler Warren had played in the NFL last year and he had 80 receptions, that would have been 5th amongst tight ends in the NFL. 750 receiving yards last year would have been the 5th most amongst tight ends. 5 touchdown receptions would have been tied for 9th most amongst tight ends. If Tyler Warren, if he can hit those numbers, if he can hit 80 receptions and 750 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, that's like a top 5 year from a tight end. Now, that bar might be a bit too high, but if he stays healthy and Shane Steichen features him as much as I think he's going to, then those numbers are attainable. Shane Steichen loved throwing to his tight ends in Philadelphia, and he loved throwing it to Hunter Henry, the 1 year he was in Los Angeles with Justin Herbert. And if he uses and focuses on Tyler Warren as much as he did in Philly and in Los Angeles, then Tyler Warren's going to have a really good year. And I think that they're going to try to feature him a lot because I think he can be a legitimate game-changing playmaker. Like the Colts have a lot of like, that's cool. A lot of like, yeah, he's good at wide receiver. Like Michael Pittman Jr. Like, is he really a 1? I don't know. Probably not. If he is, he's a low-end 1. Josh Downs, really good, shifty guy who kind of gives you a nice little change of pace and, can separate underneath. That's cool. Adonai Mitchell, really fast, good route runner, just has to learn how to catch the football through contact. Alec Pierce can really only do one thing. It's called run deep. So we'll see. Just kind of, so like when you look at all those guys and like there's just a lack of oomph. There's just like there's a lack of like firepower there. And I think that when the Colts look at Tyler Warren, they look at him as a guy who is going to be like a consistent weapon who can like make big time game changing plays. And someone in the comments over on YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe, Joe C saying 80 and 750 is very lofty. And it is, like I said, that would be, a top 5 season amongst tight ends last year. But I do think that the Colts are going to really try to get the football in his hands. I really do. Just because he's a guy who can like legitimately make big plays after the catch. Okay. And I understand that part of that is, I think part of the concern with the 80 receptions for 750 yards, part of the concern with those numbers is the quarterback room, right? Daniel Jones, not very good. Anthony Richardson, not very good either. But my counter would be if Brock Bowers can go for, 1,100 or 1,200 yards and 112 receptions with Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder, and Gardner Minshew throwing him the football, then Tyler Warren can go for 80 receptions and 750 receiving yards with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson throwing him the football. It's really just a question of how much do the Colts want to feature Tyler Warren in his first year, and I think the answer to that question is going to be a lot. A lot. I think that we're going to see a heavy dose of Tyler Warren throughout the season because he's a guy that can legitimately make these big-time, game-changing plays with his ability to make contested catches, but also his ability to run after the catch. So I think we get a really big year from Tyler Warren in his rookie season. I don't know who that pulls targets away from. Like, does Michael Pittman Jr., does his production go down a little bit because of Tyler Warren's. Josh Downs is go down a little bit. Is it Alec Pierce, which his production I think is going to go down in general just because Daniel Jones doesn't push the ball down the field the same way that Anthony Richardson does, and I do think that Daniel Jones will be the week 1 starter, so that's probably who's going to suffer the most. Probably going to see a little more Tyler Warren this year and a little bit less Alec Pierce during those games that Daniel Jones plays in. Yesterday, the Colts released an article with Carlie Irsay. She was talking about just kind of her standard and had some interesting quotes, just kind of about what she wants and just some important things to her during her ownership. Obviously, what kind of owner she is, that's a really, really important thing because ownership, it's not everything in sports, but it's pretty freaking important. I'm going to go over some of her quotes when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Tickets. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe watching on X __ Jonathan Smith. Follow me there. You can watch the show there as well. And what's going on with my computer? There we go. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app wherever you download your apps. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show there as well. Carlie Irsay had like an article come out where she did like an interview in-house with the Colts, and she had some interesting quotes in that article. I think she's going to be an interesting person. I think the quote that everyone's kind of rallying around and is excited by is her quote where she says, "I don't like talking just about winning. I like talking about being the best." It's good. I like the fact that she's talking about winning. There's a standard now. The standard is best. Colts haven't had any standard in quite some time, so it seems like Carlie's going to put some in place. You know, she's already fired a lot of people and let people go, and she's already started to make some changes, which is a good thing. So hopefully she's going to kind of get this organization headed in the right direction, because it's really just kind of been pretty dormant for the last 5 years. You know, Jim Irsay was a great owner for a long time, but as he got older and had health issues, he just wasn't as involved as he probably needed to be. And that led to a lot of 9-8s and 8-9s and indecisions at who's going to play quarterback and all those things. So hopefully Carlie Irsay's presence can kind of get things moving in the right direction. I find Carlie Irsay to be interesting and very intelligent. If you read through the whole article that the Colts put out, she referenced some different stories. Like in 1911, there were 2 explorers who sent out an attempt to become the first humans to reach the South Pole. And basically one person was from Norway, one person was from England. Each had a team, and they took these different routes. I'm not going to bore you with the whole story, but basically one person had like a set plan and they followed it no matter what. And the other person had a plan, but they were a little more lenient. And the person who had a legitimate plan made it to the South Pole while the other person did not. So basically she used that story to then kind of segue into this whole thing on how, you know, discipline is important and all these things. And like that is another really good thing to hear. Discipline and patience were important things to have, and how you can't really vary from the plans that you have. And that's a great thing to hear her say, because when you look at the Titans have had 3 different general managers in the last 4 years, because there's no discipline, there's no patience to stick to any sort of plan. Meanwhile, for, you know, Carlie Irsay, if she really is disciplined, if she thinks that that's important, and if she really finds that important to stick to a plan, then she's probably not going to have 3 different general managers over a 4-year span. So that's a good thing. Hopefully she doesn't have too much patience, though. I think that was part of the, not downfall, but part of the issue with Jim Irsay later in his career, just too much patience with Chris Ballard and this current regime. So, you know, like I said, hopefully, you know, she's a little less patient than her dad was. She also talks about the importance of drafting and developing players, and also using free agency, you know, which good luck holding on to your job, Chris Ballard, if that's really going to be the case. So speaking of Chris Ballard, he speaks to the media here in about 15 minutes. Okay, so what's he going to say? What's going to happen? And look, we all know what he's going to say. He's going to talk about how excited he is to be here, right? He's going to try to sell us on his this football team. All right, you know, just going to, you know, we're going to be good this year. You know, we like what we did in the offseason. I think Tyler Warren's going to help us. We think JT Tuimoloau out is going to help us. You know, and then he's going to make some comment about competition and how competition makes everyone better. And it's just going to be that, and he's going to give a bunch of non-answers. A lot of just like, he's going to do the thing where it sounds like he's telling you something, but he's really not. He's really just talking to talk, which is, my favorite thing. Not really. So we'll kind of see, but I'm going to go through it. I'll watch the whole thing as all the clips come out. Like, we'll be grabbing them and playing them on the air. So make sure you're tuned into the Dan Dockett Show for that. But so like, as all the clips come out, like, we're going to play them, but he's not going to say anything. Let's just be really honest. He's going to, do 20 or 30 minutes, and he's going to do his weird little laugh thing. And, and that's going to kind of be it. So we'll see. But Big Ten college football starts up here in like a little over a month. We're like 38 days away. Are there 31 days in July? I never know. Like, I never know how many days are in any month except for February. So we're like 38 or 39 days away from the start of the college football season. And I'm telling you right now, the Michigan Wolverines are going to win the Big Ten this season. And like, they're plus 1,000 right now to win. And like, I'm very, very tempted to make that bet. Like, $100 to win 1,000. Like, that's really juicy. And the thing with Michigan that I really like is their schedule. Don't like much else about them, but they got the Indiana schedule from last year. Indiana only had one tough game last year. It was at Ohio State. They won their other 11. They went 11-1, and had a chance to win the Big Ten. Michigan has one tough game. It's called Ohio State at home, and that's a team whose number that they've had for the past several years now. And look, Michigan was good at every position last year. At every position, like, they had a good player, except for quarterback. That was the one position where they were extremely lacking. And look, when you're lacking at quarterback and you can't throw a forward pass in the year 2025, then you're going to lose football games. That's not an issue this year. They've got this guy in Bryce Underwood. And I get it. Freshman. True freshman. Okay? But the guy's very talented. Number one ranked quarterback in the country coming out of high school. So they're talented at quarterback again. And the schedule is an absolute cakewalk. I mean, just an absolute joke. New Mexico at home. They're probably going to win that one. They're then at Oklahoma, who, the defense is going to be good. But is Oklahoma going to be some great football team this year? I certainly don't think so. And then they get Central Michigan at home. That's another cakewalk. They're at Nebraska, who they're going to be more talented than. They get Wisconsin at home, another team that they're going to be more talented than. Then they're at USC, another team that they're going to have more talent than. And then they get Washington at home. They're going to be more talented than them. At Michigan State, definitely going to be more talented than them. Purdue at home, that's a blowout. At Northwestern, that's a blowout. At Maryland, that's a blowout. And so, yes, they have a very inexperienced quarterback, but they're going to be talented everywhere else. And in addition to it, that young, inexperienced quarterback has 11 games before he has to play Ohio State, who's going to be by far the best team that he sees all year. So the schedule is very favorable. There's not a lot of tough opponents on there in terms of Big Ten play. So if they go 8-1 in the Big Ten, like that might win it this year, like legitimately. And if they beat Ohio State, like they've just kind of found a way to done time and time again over the past few years, then they go 9-0 in Big Ten play, and they win the Big Ten, and they're going to the college football playoff. Michigan at plus 1,000 to win the Big Ten makes a lot of sense to me. I'm probably going to bet it here at some point. I'm kind of hoping that a bunch of people bet Penn State because they are a team that a lot of people like. And I'm hoping that if enough people do that, then that Michigan number will go up just slightly, because that schedule, man, that schedule's very, very juicy. So I've got them finishing first. I've got Indiana going like 8-4, 9-3, somewhere around there, and finishing 6th in the conference. There's a lot of excitement around Indiana football right now, and rightfully so, right? Like, they've got a real coach and Coach Signetti, who did a really good job last year bringing in players, and he did it again this year. Transfer quarterback Fernando Mendoza, like the dark horse for the Heisman, all that kind of stuff. That's great. But Indiana last year, they were on this level of like really good college football team. They weren't a great college football team, right? That's Notre Dame, right? And Ohio State, like the teams that played in the final, Georgia. And the thing for me, and the reason why Indiana wasn't quite at that level, when you look at their game against Ohio State and their game against Notre Dame, they just didn't have enough in the trenches. Like they didn't. And I'm just not convinced that they're going to have enough in the trenches this season either. So that, paired with the fact that their schedule is significantly tougher this year than it was last year. Illinois at home, not easy. Like, if they lost that game, I would not be surprised. At Penn State is tough. At Oregon is tough. At Iowa, that's not a walk in the park either. So, like, the schedule is a little bit tougher this year than it was last year. The non-conference is whatever. I love that Barry Odom called out Indiana for not playing anyone good in their non-conference. But at the same time, if I was coaching a Power 5 school, I would play bad teams in the non-conference only. Because if you win 10 games, no matter who you beat, you're making the playoff. The committee confirmed that last year. So, yeah, like, I think what Indiana's doing is smart, but I also kind of like that Purdue, who's going to be really bad again this year, is calling them out for not playing anyone good in their non-conference. And to Purdue's credit, they're going to go up to South Bend and get crushed. So, congrats, Barry, who I do like, by the way. And I am intrigued by what Purdue's going to look like this year. They're going to be better than they were last year. Then again, one win, not a very high bar to surpass, right? They should beat Ball State, and they should beat Southern Illinois. They should start 2-0. After that, who knows? They get USC at home. I do think that game's winnable. At Notre Dame, blowout. Just an absolute drubbing is what's coming in that game. Then they get Illinois at home. They're going to lose that one. At Minnesota, that game seems winnable. At Northwestern, that game's winnable for Purdue. Rutgers is winnable. And at Washington is winnable. The other games on their schedule, Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, probably not going to win those. But I like Barry Odom. I think he's a good coach. It's really kind of tough to know how good or bad this team's going to be because it's a lot of transfers. It's a lot of transfers, which is a good thing because you won one game last year, Purdue. So I like Barry Odom. Went 19-8 at UNLV, put together a couple decent seasons at Missouri, but there's a reason he got fired. There were some bad seasons in there as well. Look, Purdue's not going to be great. They probably won't make a bowl game, but they'll win a couple games in the Big Ten. They'll win those two easy non-conference games against Southern Illinois and Ball State. You're going to win 4 or 5 games, and you're going to walk out. You're going to watch that team play on Saturdays, and you're going to say and you're going to feel like the team is headed in the right direction. Which I think anytime you have a first-year head coach coming off of a 1-11 season, like, that's really the feeling that you want to have. Like you want to go into the next offseason and be like, you know what? We went 5-7, but it feels like things are moving in the right direction. So, and I do think that Purdue fans are going to have that feeling at the end of this season. So, Barry Odom, I am a believer. We'll see how it goes from there. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune into The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back again tomorrow, 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next. Armando Salguero at 12:30. Uwe Blop coming on at 1 o'clock as well. Chris Ballard steps to the podium here in about 5 minutes, and we'll have all that audio for you as it comes out. Once again, tomorrow, 10 to noon, The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I will talk to you